Hi, everybody. Welcome to the RGB Masterclass Live. I'm Coury from My Life in Gaming.
I'm Troy.
And so I kind of asked everybody outside, who here is familiar with our series? Can I get a raise? Okay. we have the intro video, but we're not going to show it because that's just like a waste of time at this point. So about 2 years ago, we did a panel here, and it kind of turned out that people just wanted to ask questions instead of just like watching a presentation. So we're just going to open up the room, and whoever wants to ask questions about stuff, we will answer as best as we can. Anybody? This gentleman right here.
With the discontinuation of the Framemeister chipsets, do you foresee any future development in like a 4K Framemeister? Have you heard any rumors?
Yeah, I mean, someone has already asked us that question right here at the convention. From what we know, we've talked to a guy who kind of has some connections with MyComsoft, which is the company that makes them. He gets a little bit of insider info, and what he told us was that the parent company that owns MyComsoft doesn't necessarily like the whole upscaling business that much because the engineering costs are very high, but the product does sell very well. So, I mean, it's just kind of very much an unknown. Apparently, MyComsoft is really kind of just one engineer. At this point, I think it used to be bigger, but so it's very much up in the air. I'm just being optimistic and hope that there will be a 4K version, but I think someone somehow will do something. And of course, the OSSC is making a lot of improvements. And from what I understand, the OSSC actually works very nicely with a lot of like 4K TVs and stuff. So, I mean, I'm not too pessimistic.
It'd be crazy to not release something, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be crazy, but right now it's very much an unknown. I mean, the best speculation that we've heard from people who kind of know what they're talking about is that, it'll be a couple more years at best till we see a true successor. But we think that you'll still be able to buy the Framemeister, the current version, for another, year or so, probably.
Yeah, although it seems to be accelerating pretty quickly.
People are panicking a little bit, so.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else? This gentleman right here.
Is there any mods for like the Sega?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Like common known mods for the Sega Saturn that makes the image quality better? And like a little addendum, is there any mods to make the Sega Saturn play Blu-ray? That'd be an interesting market.
Yeah, absolutely.
New parts would be needed, and CD players in those things are going to fail eventually.
Yeah. And speaking of which, for your first question, I'm working on a Sega Saturn episode right now. We're going to see a few minutes from it at the end of the panel. It's pretty much as good as you can get in terms of the video quality. It doesn't have any of the downfalls of composite from that the Genesis and Master System had, but the image is razor sharp. No matter what model you get, either Model 1, Model 2, the skeleton Saturn, Japanese Model 1, Model 2, European. I had a chance to look at 8 different models for this episode from different regions.
And you saw no meaningful quality difference between any of them.
It's so close that, I couldn't tell anything.
Yeah,
like
the
side by
RGB
side.
is pretty perfect. The one thing that kind of came up, someone told us about, like when using the Framemeister, the Saturn uses a few weird resolution modes. And on just a few of them, like you might get like a jail bar effect because the Framemeister doesn't really...
Only with the Framemeister, it seems.
Right, the Framemeister just doesn't sync those resolutions correctly. But I think with any other solution, you wouldn't see those. And I think it's only in a few games, maybe. I'm not.
Like Street Fighter Alpha 2.
He's a Saturn expert.
Yeah, it's supposed to. This is really, really recent that he found this out. It's the guy who does the NES, like the profile, the color profiles. And also does the Firebrand X does the profiles for the
Framemeister.
Yeah. And he just discovered this when he just was really getting into the Saturn. So I'm going to try it with the OSSC, and I don't expect to find anything. He says it's just he doesn't see it on his TV, plugged directly in. So.
Yeah. But Saturn is just about as good as it gets with RGB.
Yeah. Back here. Oh.
There's been, at least from what I've read, like on assembler game forums and stuff, like there's been comments about how the PlayStation 2 tends to process video and how, especially in PS2 games, like video looks kind of muddy. Have there been any developments as far as like getting like an HDMI mod or like something that lets you pull video straight from the
No HDMI as far as I know.
Yeah,
so
not
far.
that I've heard of. PS2 is kind of an interesting situation, and really the 480i systems in general. I am going to start, Coury's working on the Saturn episode right now. I'm going to start working on the PS2 episode in sometime in July. That doesn't mean it's going to release in July. That doesn't necessarily even mean it's going to release in August, but I hope it could. But I'm going to start working on it, and I've got basically all the stuff that I need to do that episode. I think a big part of that episode is going to be, coming to terms with the concept of 480i. I mean, let's face it, it's 480i. We've been talking a lot with one of the guys from Digital Foundry, John Linneman, and if anyone's familiar with Digital Foundry, they do they're sort of part of Eurogamer, and they do these fantastic. Mostly on modern systems, like comparing the differences between modern versions, but they also occasionally, John Linneman does these retro ones, and he is like a PS2 expert. Like, he has just studied the system and its capabilities inside and out. And I was talking to him a while back. He was talking to me about how the PS2 does some very interesting things with 480i rendering. It's something called field rendering. And it just kind of went over my head a little bit when he was explaining it, but I'm going to talk to him a bit more before doing that episode, because the look of PS2 on a CRT is just really, really nice and crisp. And that's something I've only started to really appreciate recently. It's very different from the look on an HD TV, and I feel like it just doesn't quite do it justice. If you're going to play PS2 on HD TV, which I very frequently do, I think you just kind of have to, either kind of accept that, it's not exactly high res, or, Final Fantasy 12 Zodiac Age is coming out in a few weeks, so, just buy the HD versions. But it's going to be an interesting episode, and I'm just about to delve into my research, so I don't have all the answers right now, so look forward to that.
Back here with the glasses.
Who would you recommend buying RGB cables from? There's a couple big guys. I'm looking for a SCART to SCART, and I don't want to get...
This is a complicated question.
Yeah, actually. For SCART to SCART, Amazon has started selling them in the US, a company called Cable Direct. That's cable with a K, and Direct has a K instead of a C. And they're very, very good. They're very well shielded. Each line in it is shielded, and they're not expensive at all. Very, very good option for just going SCART to SCART. In terms of getting RGB cables from people, like people that are making them for each system, it's a bit more complicated. We've typically recommended retro console accessories on eBay, but recently we've kind of found out that her quality might be slipping a bit.
Right. Most of the cables I have are from retro console accessories, but we, in particular regarding Genesis, we found out some very worrying things.
Yeah, thanks to our friend Voltar, who does system modding. So retro console accessories puts these things in it. They advertise it as boosted sync, but it turns out that it's very, very bad. It's like sending way too much.
I had issues with my NES RGB mod with their cables, but none with the ones from the UK.
Yeah. See, that's the other thing. Retro Gaming Cables in the UK has really been working with a lot of people like Voltar to make their cables the best that they can be.
Right. Kind of what
really stepped up their quality.
Kind of what we've been hearing is that neither of them had perfect cables in the beginning, but we've been hearing that more recently that the UK seller, Retro Gaming Cables, has kind of been taking that constructive criticism and putting it to practice and actually improving the cables, because a lot of people did point out some issues with how they're engineered and stuff like that.
But don't buy anything with boosted sync.
If it says boosted sync,
we've heard, it's killing people's Framemeisters. recently. We've heard that happening.
It can just wear down the protection circuits, over time. It's not necessarily going to do anything right away, but yeah, we stopped using those C-Sync cables because apparently the Genesis has a very high voltage output for the C-Sync anyway, and so it's not a good idea to use a cable like that. So yeah, and we've heard we probably can't talk about right now, but we've heard about like developments that people are coming up with for some pretty clever alternatives to the normal SCART
Make it a lot
setup.
cheaper, but very, very well made.
Yeah, so we can't really talk about that right now, but I think it'll continue to be relatively easy to get SCART stuff in the future.
Thanks. In the middle here?
Probably not going to get much of anything, but is there any news on a GameCube HDMI plug and play?
Well, that's another complicated answer. I think that our GameCube was probably a bit premature.
The GameCube episode, yeah.
Yeah. Did I say GameCube?
You said our GameCube was premature.
Yeah. The GameCube, it was a bit premature. I think because a lot of people have sent their stuff to Badass Consoles and like I've heard nothing. He's had them for some of the people's systems for over a year.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've been hearing that his communication with his customers has not been great, and he wasn't quite entirely ready to install those when he started taking orders. So that it's kind of a bad situation right now because, people just don't really have a lot of options for. I know that someone posted some pictures on a forum of a GameCube plug and play that they worked on, but then received a lot of criticism.
Yeah.
That it was designed in such a way that it would put a lot of stress on like the connector in the system or something
it was like
like
a
that.
sandwich design they called it, where it kind of eventually over time, like the weight on it would make it so that none of the contacts.
Right, but then so he, pulled that, and I believe was going to make some revisions to it. I would love to see someone is going to make a good product for that eventually.
Yeah.
But it feels like we're right on the cusp of it happening, but it just hasn't quite happened yet, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. In the back against the wall.
Have you had any hands-on experience with the Acura Dreamcast HDMI box?
No, we use Turos for ours right now.
Which
but
is from the same people, Bahar Bros.
Yeah. Once we get to the Dreamcast, we try to go in order. Saturn needs to happen, and then we'll
order-ish.
Yeah.
Sort of.
In terms of
manufacturer.
manufacturers. But when it comes time to do that, we'll get all of their stuff and test each one.
Yeah.
And they're different. I know that Bob from Retro RGB has all of them, so hopefully he'll lend them to us instead of having to.
But the Toro is great. For now, you have the choice of using VGA or SCART, and it does do 480p over SCART, so that makes it very convenient for connecting to the Framemeister. But just direct HDMI connection sure would be very handy.
Yeah, works great with the
I'm
OSSC.
looking forward to trying it.
Sitting on the floor here.
Speaking of Dreamcast HDMI, have you guys been following the progress on that Dreamcast HDMI board? It's a FPGA board that's being discussed on Shunks, and do you have any?
Is that the one by Ash Evans?
I believe so.
So we've talked to him a little bit, but it's been a while. I didn't realize that the project had grown as much as it had. I thought it was just gonna be a mod at first, but now it looks like he's like designing a whole new board that just like fits right into the case. I mean, that's just what I heard about that last night.
Have you got any faith in it? Like, do you think it's going to do well? Like, do you think somebody's going to pick it up and offer it as a service to purchase?
Hopefully.
Is that the one that Stone Age Gamer was originally talking
Yeah.
to?
Working on it or something. I had it on display at one of the panels.
Yeah, I think it was going to be here last year, but there was like a last minute issue, and I think it's just had further development. But I personally haven't been following it that closely because this guy takes care of most of the Sega stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically all I know. Is I know that I just heard it as an FPGA. It's gonna just like be a complete like board replacement, and he's gonna have it so you can hook up a hard drive to it and all this other stuff.
I mean, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's available by the time we do a Dreamcast video.
Yeah. Oh, right back here in the white shirt.
I got a question about the Framemeister. I finally got mine back in April, and I noticed no matter what input I used, the audio was reversed on it. And I had to go into the audio setting, go into like HDMI and switch it over to the D, and then back to HDMI, click in order to get the audio to switch.
Really?
Wow, I've never heard of that.
I wonder if that's a firmware issue. I mean, I haven't done any tests to like see if it's actually messed up like that.
Yeah, I mean, I know
What if
that-
everything we've been doing, the audio's been reversed?
Well, no, I mean, I think I've listened closely enough to not have that, but I know that for sure, the cables I used to use for my Xbox had reverse audio channels, and I swapped those,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I never noticed it with anything else.
Well, you know, the Saturn will have a little bit about reverse audio channels.
Yes, it will, because the cables themselves, a lot of cables were designed with reversed audio on the Saturn.
Yeah, exactly, like the S video and composite. And there's going to be a fun little, I mean, this is a little inside info, and we have a little guest star to talk about the reverse audio channels. We have Clint from Lazy Game Reviews going to make a little PSA. He made a little PSA for it. Should be fun. Yes, sir.
Why is it that it seems like the Sega Genesis is always a problem when you're trying to capture composite on it? Like, I have like a cheap composite capture device. It works with every system, but Sega Genesis, it would always do it. It would just be like a gray screen, and like the game would play, but it would all be gray. And so I thought, okay, whatever. You know, it's probably just this crappy capture device. I got another one, and it did the same thing. I tried it. I was actually trying it on a clone system that I was reviewing, and I was like, okay, well, let me just try it with my Genesis, and it doesn't work. And Genesis, for some reason, I cannot capture composite on.
Interesting.
I don't think I've ever heard of any problem with the Genesis composite other than it looks bad.
Yeah.
I've been able to capture composite on the Genesis 2 with my Agalo.
Just the standard one. See, I got the HD60.
But I want to get the...
Does a good job.
Okay.
Is it a 240p thing?
Yeah, I mean, it might be a 240p thing, but you say
Like
you say
other
that all other systems work?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, I'm assuming that the only game you're trying games other than Sonic 2, because the thing I hate about Sonic 2 is when you're booting it up on the Framemeister, you have to be like mashing the start button, because there's like this very short frame of time before that first gameplay demo starts, and it's got that weird 480i split screen mode that the Framemeister won't use at all.
Yeah, and it just throws it off the rest of the time. Oh, yes, sir.
So I love the Game Boy episode and how many different ways you could get it to play on a television. So with the Game Boy player and the custom firmware that has the better lag, is there any better way of getting that than an Action Replay disc with the memory card?
I mean,
it could be modded.
I mean, the system can be modded. Again, I'm not real sure where you can get that from exactly.
It was like the Mega Drive or something
Yeah,
like that.
but that was...
It's another baddest console.
So we don't, I don't know. But
For the Action Replay.
yeah, I mean, the Action Replay is cool because you don't have to mod the system.
You
That's
can
what I
even
like
rename
about
the
it.
files on the Action Replay so it boots up directly into the Game Boy interface. You have to like change the name of the.
You have to
boot
change
up.
the file name. I think you might have to change the extension for it to work too.
Yeah.
I haven't
Is
actually.
that drastic of a change to really look for it, or is the, stock firmware on that good enough? You think?
Stock firmware on.
For the Game Boy player.
Oh well, the
It's just hardware.
on the Action Replay is just. I mean, it's just all that does is boot the GameCube into a mode where it will accept loading programs from the memory card slot.
The program, the Game Boy interface. So that.
It doesn't like change the firmware on the hardware itself. It is just software that runs using the Game Boy player hardware. So, yeah, I mean, the Action Replay is just a means to get to that software, and that software has continued to receive updates, and you just change the software on your SD card. So, does that answer sort of?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, but when you just said PlayStation 2, I'm like, oh wait, that actually popped a thought in my head. I recently just got my hands on a composite, the 5-cable thing, red, green,
Component.
Component. Yeah. Yes, and then I thought a little bit more about this. I'm like, which is better, a PlayStation 3 playing a PlayStation 2 game, or a PlayStation 2 with the HDMI adapter playing?
You're talking about PlayStation 2 with that, what they call it, like PS2 to HDMI?
Yes.
I have
It's a
one.
Wii version of that.
Yeah, I
Doesn't
have.
need power.
Yeah, I have one. I haven't tested it yet, but I have one for the episode. You know, like I say, I'm kind of about to move into production on that episode, so I'm going to test that out. As for the PS3, we're also borrowing a launch PS3 from a viewer of the show so that it will have the hardware-based backwards compatibility as well. I personally own a software backwards compatible PS2 or PS3 with the software backwards compatible PS2 hardware, or I shouldn't say hardware, but whatever. But yeah, so we're going to be comparing all those things. I mean, but at the end of the day, again, it's still all upscaling a relatively low resolution image. You know, I don't expect that HDMI dongle is going to do a whole lot of anything more amazing than the PS3 could do the upscale, or the Framemeister, or the OSSC, or any of that. If you're playing on HDTV, it's still going to be, you know, kind of got that.
It's convenience.
It's convenience. It's convenience. But I feel like at the end of the day, the best way is going to be on a real PS2. But we're going to see. I haven't done all of my tests and comparisons for that yet, so I can't say one way or the other. But like I say, hopefully within the next 2-ish months, you might be able to find that answer on the channel.
I'd like to find out, because I don't know whether to buy a PlayStation 3 model 60 gigabyte or not. I have a PlayStation 3 40 gigabyte.
Yeah.
Oh, with the emulation. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I would avoid like the PS3 Fats because they seem
don't
to
last.
they have bad failure rates. Yeah, I had one on my first software backwards compatible PS3 that happened.
Get a lead solder upgrade. Just replace the solder on that. Get the lead solder stuff. There's like kits for this. Nice kits, $200 kits. You can fix as many Xbox or PlayStation 3s as you want with lead solder.
Yeah, I
very much.
All right. Yes, sir.
What's your experience with Atari Jaguar and RGB?
Not a lot, but it is in the plans. I have a friend that we go way back, and he has like a complete collection of our Atari Jaguar games. You know, he has like all this stuff that is like unreleased.
I have one, and I bought a cable from the retro gaming cable in the UK because Console Accessories doesn't sell one. No sound, or sound, no video directly into a Framemeister. Once I got the G-SCART switch, put it in, sound, no video, but if I unplug it from the Jaguar while it's powered on and plug it back in, I get video and sound.
I can't wait to get to that.
Cable I've been able to use, I mean, you can buy like original French SCART cables for it, but I haven't. I mean,
Interesting.
It works enough to play Super
I know that the guy that I know has a official one, so I mean we'll see what happens. That sounds pretty exciting. Anybody else? Yes, back here.
I have a question with the original Xbox. Right, currently I run component into a 4K television. I fortunately do have GameCube component cables as well as the HD Retro Vision guys, they're Genesis. And I run all of them through a switch, which then goes into the 4K television. But I noticed when I run my Xbox into the switch, there's green flickering during games. It doesn't happen on the dashboard, it's just during the games. Is there any reason why that would happen?
Are the component cables something you got like off of like Amazon or?
No, they're Microsoft.
Interesting. It's not the high def box with.
It is the high def box.
Okay. Because I just got one of the boxes, and I have official like the cables, the full set of cables that were released as well. I mean, that's something when we get to the Xbox episode, we'll be comparing those two because that's I'm really interested to see if there's any difference. Because you know you have to use like kind of your own cables once you go out of that box. But
does the Xbox menu run in 480p if you have it set?
It boots up in 480i no matter what.
I'm just trying to think about what would change when it boots into the game. I'm certainly not an Xbox expert, but
yeah,
we're going to get there.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'd just like to add to that because I got a PVM recently and I connected the Xbox running component. I watched your episode and I decided to run a components cable. Or anyway, I ran a component cable to it and I got that HD bus you're talking about. And yeah, I have just a non-stop green image, even on the PVM. It's just solid green.
Interesting. 'Cause I have their the official cables, the official like set of cables, not the box, and I have not run into any problems at all.
I think that was the official Microsoft one also. That component one that it says Xbox on it, like it's officially from them, and it has the component cables. I don't know, it just came as a package. I bought it a long time ago.
Right, it's like the high def pack or something.
I think so. Yeah, and it's just a solid green screen.
Interesting. I know that Joe Redifer from GameStack uses that, and he doesn't have any problems. But he doesn't use the PVM either.
Yeah. If anyone watching the recording of this video has any tips on that, please leave a comment on the video because we'll need to know that for the future.
Yeah. It's amazing the amount of stuff that we learn just from people saying, "Oh, hey, don't forget to do this," or "I've run into this problem," and it gives us always something to look into. It's almost never ending. Yes, sir. Against the wall.
Have you guys ever considered looking at a lot of the HD remakes that have been coming out for modern systems and maybe comparing them to if you were to run that same game on a Framemeister or...
See, that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, and absolutely, PS2, of course, got a ton of those on PS3, and now they're getting more on PS4.
As we mentioned earlier, Digital Foundry, like DF Retro, is doing a lot of cool stuff like that. I mean, they have like this custom software that like analyzes the frame rate, and you can see where the drops are on each one. It's really, really cool, like beyond what we'd be able to do just in our homes.
Yeah.
The reason why I bring it up is because the one Digital Foundry article that stood out the most is when they looked at the Silent Hill remake, the remaster, I should say, and they were like comparing it, like and how much it had changed and drastically, and probably just better off just getting the original PS2.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I got rid of my remake or the ports and just got the original ones.
Yeah, I just got like a week and a half ago Silent Hill 2, the PS2 version. But expect, I would say, a lot of comparisons of like HD ports in the PS2 episode because there are a lot. I mean, I feel like, there's a lot of great smaller things that never will get ports on the PS2, but a lot of maybe even a majority of like the key PS2 titles, like they are available on other systems in HD, so that's kind of cool.
Anybody else? Oh, against the wall. Oh, sorry.
Two questions. I was watching your NES RGB versus NES HDMI, and it's kind of hard to tell over YouTube. You yourself, you had to pick. What would you say? Is one superior over the other, or are they both going to the Framemeister? You can't lose either way.
I prefer to use just RGB because I play on a PVM I just use my Framemeister to capture essentially.
But if you're playing on HDTV, I mean, it's again, that's a complicated question. I primarily use my RGB NES. It is a little bit softer than the HDMI certainly, but the big reason is that it just fits into my setup better, because I'm using RGB with so many other systems, and it just kind of streamlines everything, and I think keeps everything consistent. The other problem with the HDMI mod, it's a fantastic mod, but it can only do 4x vertical scaling within 1080p. If you're using 720p, it's not really a problem, but that will make the image a little smaller on a 1080p set. And you can't get that integer scale with like a really good aspect ratio. You know what I'm talking about from the episode. So the best you can do is either too skinny or too fat for the non-integer scale. With the NT Mini, which of course is not truly original hardware, but it's made by the same guy who did the high def mod kit. That is really cool because it does let you do the 5x, which I prefer. It cuts a little bit off the top and bottom, but it's not a problem in most games. I feel like it's very similar to what would be cut off on a CRT anyway, so that's kind of why I like it. And you can get that integer scale. You can get like 4x vertical and then 6x horizontal, 5x vertical and 6x horizontal, and that to me is really close to the right aspect ratio. I feel like the aspect ratio is, kind of the preference is going to vary from person to person, because if you compare two CRTs, the NES games and games on a lot of other systems, some might be fatter, it just depends on the set. But I feel like it's just all about what looks right to you, if it looks too skinny, too fat. But the NT Mini visually is probably the best. But it's not true.
And it has the most options, really.
It has, it's
crazy what you can do with it now.
It's very versatile, and you can do RGB out of it too if you want. But of course, you can use HDMI. And the other thing about the high def mod, and I didn't know this until working on the NT Mini episode, is that it actually downclocks the NES very slightly. The NES runs at a refresh rate that is just the most minuscule amount faster than 60 hertz. Which means that it might not fall into a range that a lot of HD TVs like. Some might display it, some might not. But to just make it compatible with everything and not have to deal with the headache, what he did was make it so that it downclocks the system so that it outputs frames at 60 hertz consistently. So technically, it's a teensy bit slower. If you're using the high def mod. Same with the NT Mini if you're using HDMI, but with the NT Mini if you're using RGB, it outputs at that true NES refresh, so the correct speed. So if that, you'll never see the difference, obviously, because it's just so minuscule. But if the idea of that bugs you a little bit, if it's it's not running the game exactly like it should, but it's so close, RGB mod is not going to change anything about how the game's processed.
Anybody else? Oh, yes, sir.
Realistically, how long do we probably have till we have to start worrying about disk rot?
That's something I haven't run into it with any of my games.
Yeah, I haven't either. It's kind of the thing that I don't think it really, hits home until it happens to you.
Yeah.
It's not a topic I know a lot about. But personally, I'm not too. I mostly play for cartridge-based consoles. I mostly play the real cartridges. I'm not super into the whole flash card thing. But I do kind of recognize for disc-based systems, that might be a eventual reality of how we have to play that hardware. And I am interested in investigating more thoroughly with you've got a Saturn.
Yeah, I was donated a Saturn that has an SD card reader in it, and it's pretty amazing. I'm going to do that episode pretty much right after the Saturn RGB episode, just because I think it's pretty cool, and we'd like to feature more of the SD card reader, the solid state mods to them, and I think that's it's a good way to do it. It's pretty much perfect compatibility, but I've run into a couple of little issues here and there. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
You have the PSIO, but you're limited to 32 gigs, so it's what technology do I really like?
Yeah.
It's I don't know if you've heard of anybody that's figured out a way to get hard drives.
Are you limited to 32 gigs because of the actual hardware or because of the FAT32 limitation?
I believe it's either the limitation of the hardware or something like that.
Because I found a way that there's you can format the larger SD cards with FAT32. There's a special program to do it. The Saturn one uses uses FAT32, but I was able to format it in such a way that I could put a 128 gig card in it and put a ridiculous amount of games on this time and half full. Okay, anybody else? What's our time looking like? Do we know?
We've only been going about 35 minutes.
Okay, just making sure.
The Saturn video is 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's 3.5 minutes. Okay, anybody else? Oh, yes, sir.
With the Saturn episode you're working on and the SD card readers, do you have more information on the plug and play that the guy had cracked?
Dr. Abrasive? I think he's the one who's cracked it.
So he's doing a plug and play?
I know that he's working on it. I know he has a Patreon. They can, so he's dedicating to it full time. I don't really know too much about it. I'm looking forward to it. I'll probably go back to using my non-SD card modded one as soon as that becomes available. I like having the option of playing the actual game discs.
You have another option right now, right? Unless I'm thinking
you're thinking of Pseudo Saturn. Pseudo Saturn is a hack to is a reflashing of the action replay. It allows you to play burns and all that stuff. Although I've heard that it does not work at all with Panzer Dragoon Saga. which is kind of a bummer.
That's like the point, right?
The devil's game.
I saw you had a question, sir.
Yeah, I'm just curious also, RGB SCART versus component, how do you feel, like, is it RGB SCART always win over the component option, or?
In my opinion, it does.
It does in the sense that, you know, a lot of people, we get a lot of comments that's like, you guys don't give component enough credit. Component is mathematically equivalent to RGB. And, you know, from what I understand, that is more or less technically true. But the difference with RGB is that it kind of just tells the scaler or the PVM or whatever it is you plug it into. It's like, this color, it's this color. And your TV's like, okay, that's the color I'm going to show. With a component, you have a lot more control, or you have to really kind of tweak the colors to exactly match what RGB would be. Component is a lot more, as big of a hassle as this whole thing is, component really is kind of just, once you plug it in, the image looks like it should in terms of,
you mean
of
RGB
color and
looks
quality.
like it.
Or yeah, what did I say?
You were saying component.
RGB. Yeah, RGB is just, it just is what it is. And it's kind of no fuss once you've plugged it in.
Right.
So, I mean, but in terms of sharpness, like, I don't think there's any example of like the RGB is sharper than the component output from a system.
Yeah, and we will be comparing, Saturn RGB versus, HD Retrovision is releasing a dongle for the Genesis cables that plugs in. We had a chance to mess with the the final revisions, the ones that are going to be available pretty soon, probably even before the episode is out. Hopefully. Yes, sir.
They sent an email.
Oh, really?
3 weekends, including this weekend, is rolling out.
Oh, okay. Actually, we were Nick from HD Retrovision was supposed to join us today, but he got a nail in his tire. Yes, sir, not here.
If you had to pick one RGB monitor to have for the rest of your life, and which would it be and why?
I think we both probably picked the same thing. It's the Sony PVM 20L5.
Yeah.
I was able to get one for free. A friend gave it to me. Like, he said, they're throwing. He works at a news station. Said, they have a whole bunch. They're just going to take them to the trash. Do you want me to grab you one? I'm like, yes, yeah, because that was the first one I ever got.
That was before we really even quite understood just how good they were.
Yeah, and it even sat in my house. I didn't even hook it up for like months.
Yeah, but now you play on it all the time.
Yeah, it's like I'll play on it because it can do up to 1080i. 480p on it looks unbelievable. I mean, it's something you got to see in person.
I mean, I eventually just had to crack and buy one. Someone did cut me a pretty good deal, but it was still a few $100s. But
they're tough to find. I was able to find a 14 locally.
14s look really, really good. There's something to be said about playing, like on a 14-inch monitor. It looks so crisp.
Good. It's very different. I also have a MegaView Mitsubishi 37-inch one. It's a difference in how the picture is. It's pretty drastic on there.
I can't even imagine how much that thing must weigh.
Almost 300 pounds. It's insane. It's actually sitting in it's in a flight case. I got it off the video production company that was getting rid of it for $100.
I can't even imagine. My wife would go nuts. And I'd have to carry that up to the third floor of the house.
It's amazing, but it's loud and very heavy.
I mean, as it is now, I can't stop buying them if I see them for a good enough price. And it's like I kind of sneak it up there. I hope she's not gonna watch this video. I kind of sneak it up there and she's like, "Wait, is that new?" No, I got that's just like it isn't bad.
Manufactured in '96.
Right? 10 minutes? Okay. Okay, we got time for one or two more, and then we'll watch the Saturn. Sir.
This is interesting. I have a 10-year-old Samsung, and I'm thinking of upgrading. I'm like, do you guys have any experience with the new HDR TVs or anything like OLED?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot of research.
That's something we're excited to do an episode on it.
Right, I want to do an episode that's gaming on 4K TVs. Sort of a mixture of retro and modern and all the considerations that go into that, because even modern can be a little more complicated than you think. This is my current leaning. I mean, obviously there's the OLED, and I'm thinking about saving up for one. Maybe it'd be kind of hard to do. I mean, they obviously look beautiful. Apparently, there are some concerns with burn-in on OLEDs. I don't know if it's how severe, how risky that is necessarily. So I'm going to look into that a little bit more. I would like, if I could afford it, I would like to get one because that would be amazing. Now, I understand, I know with the 2016 LG OLEDs, like their flagship one, they actually released a firmware patch for that reduced the input lag significantly and is actually quite good. And I believe, John Linneman from Digital Foundry, who we were mentioning, he uses a 2016 LG OLED. And I think he said it works with most of the OSSC modes. I think I can't remember if he said he tested it out. Don't quote me on that. But I think he might have. But I know he, a lot of things work really well on it. And Voltar, who we mentioned before, he is way into some of the Vizios. Because some of the Vizios from last year, and I believe this year too, have very low input lag, though it might only be, a weird thing is that apparently input lag varies from input to input on a lot of TVs. So you have to use particular inputs, and that might be a little more research, but also with the Vizio, I know the Vizio, and I apologize for not knowing the model number, but I know the one he bought, apparently it works with all of the OSSC modes, which would be insane. And that's something that I'm hoping, I'm using the Framemeister a lot now, but I'm hoping that when I get a 4K TV, I can use the OSSC a lot more because I've got a Samsung that's about 5 years old and the OSSC hates it. So, or it hates the OSSC rather. So
my Samsung has no problem. It's a 2014.
Yeah, and so
you can do up to even the new 5X.
It seems like Vizio. A lot of the prices are a lot more affordable than some of the mid-range to higher range. I mean, I don't want to imply that Vizio is necessarily low range because from what I've seen, they do look really good. A friend of mine actually just got one. And I haven't had a chance to go over and see it yet, but I'm going to bring over my PS4 Pro and put it through its paces. I'm excited about that. But that'll help me inform my decision about what I'm going to buy. But it's kind of what my research has led me to conclude is that it's you either go for affordable or you just go all out and buy the OLED. But it seems like the stuff in the middle, I don't feel like there's enough benefit over the lower priced ones to go for the 1,500 or whatever range. Either save your money or go all out. That's
I heard a lot of good things about the new Vizios, and from what I see in the stores, their pictures come a long way from
Because I used to always think of them as the budget, the cheap ones.
Yeah, but I think the what I'm excited about is I think the OSSC works nicely with them from what I understand. So I'm excited to try it out.
All right, we'll do one more.
Just to expand on the Vizio thing, that's the D series that Voltar recommended.
Oh, okay,
right.
I recently bought
the D
one,
series.
and I do recommend it. It is very nice.
Did you buy the same model Voltar bought?
Nice.
Yeah. So.
Sony and Vizio traded a lot of patents back and forth, 5 to 6 years ago. So that's probably why they're.
That's cool to hear.
Okay, cool.
And you had a question, yes?
Any idea or a spoiler when you might be doing a PC Engine?
PC Engine?
We've been planning it for so long, but we're I think we're kind of close to ready to do it.
Yeah, there's so many weird Japanese variations. Really excited about it. And one of the big things
I finally just got mine. I got mine RGB modded. I've got the interface unit style one. So we've more or less got what we need. But PC Engine people are passionate, and you don't want to be wrong.
I just got the Doujin dance removed.
Yes.
From the yes, sir. Last one.
Wait, you just said Doujin dance removed. One of you guys bought a Doujin dance?
I did.
Originally,
years
before we knew any better.
Yeah. Voltar likes to call him Doujin dance. It's it's funny because. What's that?
Was that yours that he serviced?
Yeah, I was one of the first ones that he did.
How did that go for you? So everything's working smoothly now?
Yeah, I mean, he sent me pictures as it's happening. It was
It made you so mad to see the insides.
Yeah, it's just like that black epoxy he puts on everything.
Yeah, but mine was a fresh mod with the interface unit, and
it's interesting
awesome.
because I think that Dooch and Dance, like he has like great reviews and everything because nobody really knows. I didn't know.
It works. It works at first.
Yeah, exactly. Like most people don't think about it.
But didn't you record some comparisons, like after you got yours back, and you saw that like the RGB quality was you didn't realize
like ghosting and all this other stuff.
You didn't realize how bad it was at first.
Yeah.
You just didn't think about it.
So just don't buy Dooch.
Yeah, buy unmodded systems and then decide how to get them modded later. But
you have like a recommendation on that? 'Cause I tried to get in touch with Voltar because he's so busy.
Voltar is so busy, but he's the good one.
The thing that everyone's going to recommend though is to like just don't buy anything pre-modded unless you can like see it, unless they show you the mod in the images, and then you could like run it by somebody or something, because that seems to be like an issue with a lot of this stuff is people are just buying stuff and they don't really know what it looks like. So you don't know the kind of job. So a lot of people are starting to say, just buy a system that's like not modded and then send it to somebody to have them modded. Last one. Again.
Like with the modding, I know that Bob at Retro RGB wants to do like a verified modder page or something.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Have you guys thought of that? Like
I've wished for it, but
we also have kind of aspirations to do kind of a documentary on a lot of these modders themselves.
Might be a ways off, but we'll see. All right, should we get to the little Saturn preview?
Yeah, I gotta stress that this is still pretty early.
There's a rough cut. There's a lot of missing sound effects. A lot of we're going to swap out some clips. There's missing backgrounds, graphics, but
yeah, you can. I just want to. This is like the don't expect anything revelatory in this.
Yeah, this is kind of the introductory segment. There's not like this is RGB, this is composite, this is S-Video. This is like the introductory part that's just kind of talking an overview of the Saturn hardware.
Yeah. There's no, you're going to see, it's in rough shape. That's all right. Sega released the Saturn in Japan in November of 1994. Defined by its dark gray color and oval-shaped buttons, it was originally designed to be a 2D powerhouse, one that could efficiently handle the sprite-based games that Sega had built its reputation upon. But a year out from its release, Sega rushed a redesign of the hardware in order to compete with Sony's PlayStation console. The changes to the architecture were a challenge for developers early on, making it very difficult to wrangle its true power when it came to 3D graphics. However, developers capitalized on the Saturn's hardware strengths and created some of the most impressive 2D games ever made. After a successful launch in Japan, the Saturn was released in North America and Europe in spring and summer of 1995. The surprise North America launch is particularly infamous, with a lack of advance notice upsetting retailers. It has generally been considered an ill-advised move to beat Sony's console to market. The Sega Saturn displays most games at 240p, a progressive resolution compatible with consumer CRTs that works extremely well for low-res, sprite-based games. This was also the norm for previous console generations. However, the Sega Saturn and its contemporary consoles also marked the beginning of regular use of 480i, which was the intended resolution for NTSC televisions. 480i uses interlaced fields to use the full resolution of a CRT television, but the downside is that you might notice a flicker effect. 480i was most prominently incorporated in some of the more polygon-heavy games, especially 3D fighting games like Virtua Fighter. Some games even combine the two resolutions, with the main game displaying at 240p, while the title or menu screens might run at 480i, which can cause some headaches when playing on modern displays, but we'll get into that a bit later. The Saturn has a minimum horizontal resolution of 320 pixels. This caused a few issues for developers when they ported their games over from other consoles, such as having to add borders to Mega Man X3 and doubling every fourth pixel in Castlevania Symphony of the Night. In addition, the Saturn built its 3D worlds using rectangular polygons, as opposed to the standard triangle-based polygons, which gives the Saturn's 3D games a decidedly different look compared to its competitors. For a deeper look at what the Saturn's hardware can do, Low Scoreboy on YouTube has an excellent series of videos on the subject. The Saturn plays its games from optical CD-ROM media, but it also has a cartridge slot. The slot was primarily used for save game backup and extended RAM cards that were available in two flavors, 1 or 4 megabytes. This might sound a lot like the 8 megabyte RAM expansion pack for the Nintendo 64, but no games were ever designed to use the extra RAM for alternate video modes. Instead, it was mainly used for additional frames of animation and faster loading. A great alternative to the official extended RAM are Action Replay carts. They are readily available on Amazon and eBay and combine save game backup, cheats, and extended RAM capabilities. The Action Replay lets you play games from other regions, which is a real boon for gamers outside of Japan because the Saturn's Japanese game library is simply incredible, and generally a lot less expensive. Finally, one more expansion slot is hidden away at the back of the console, inside of the battery bay. Inserting an optional MPEG card allows the Saturn to play back VCDs, a pre-DVD video media that was popular in Asian regions. Several games, like Lunar the Silver Star Story, use this card to display higher quality full-motion video. Most recently, a hacker by the name of Professor Abrasive has exploited this port, opening a path to flash carts. Over time, the internals of the Saturn in each region were tweaked and optimized, resulting in numerous revisions of the motherboard. Despite this, each revision provides approximately the same results from region to region. Well, that should make our job a little bit easier, so let's get started.
We've been waiting so long to use the Panzer Dragoon level 1 music. I've been wanting to use it in so many episodes, of course, like, no, it has to be the first track in the Saturn episode.
There's some good songs in this one. There's some like the Rusty Ruins from Sonic 3D Blast, which was a great song. I really wanted to use Daytona in there, but it was too fast at the beginning, and is too like chaotic sounding behind what I wanted to do with it. All right, was that it?
I guess so.
Thanks so much, everybody, for coming.